After competing against the best in the world and coaching thousands of runners, I'm going to outline some realistic running pace standards for every level of training experience, from complete beginner all the way up to the best in the world. I'm also going to give you practical training strategies at each level to help you move up a tier and to help you become a more efficient and faster runner without getting injured. But before we jump into the beginner level, we first have to clarify a few things that affect your pace beyond just your training. First of all, it's important to realize that just like strength and muscle size, your running speed is influenced by your genetics. But that doesn't mean that you're stuck where you are. There are huge individual differences in running performance, and they come down to a few factors. Your VO2 max, which is your body's ability to use oxygen efficiently, your running economy, which is how much energy you waste while you're running, and your muscle fiber composition. So some people naturally have more slow twitch fibers helping them with endurance, and some people naturally have more fast twitch fibers, which helps them with sprinting. Your body type also matters. Lighter runners with longer legs tend to be better at endurance, and people with shorter legs and more mass tend to be better at sprinting. But here's the good news. No matter where you start, with consistent, structured training, you can push far beyond your natural ability. I've built the pace standards based on years of coaching experience, elite training models, and data from real-world race results. So they represent what's actually achievable and not just what you see on social media. But before I show you, I want to give you 3 quick disclaimers about these running pace standards. First of all, these numbers assume a proper pacing strategy. Running at max effort is different than running a sustainable race pace effort. Also, your training will always be slower than your race pace effort due to fatigue and volume. Second, these numbers are based on well-trained runners and not just casual joggers. If you only run 1 or 2 times per week or every now and then expect progress to be slower. And third, your weight, height, and muscle mass will skew the numbers. Heavier runners usually have to work harder to maintain the same pace because they use more energy with every step. Lighter runners, on the other hand, usually find it easier to sustain pace over longer distances. If you want to estimate your ideal race pace, then I'll leave a link to a calculator in the description that'll help you get a more accurate prediction. So let's look at the running pace tiers from beginner to genetic freak. If you've just started running, then don't worry about speed just yet. Your main focus should just be running consistently, building endurance, and learning how to run efficiently. Your typical race paces will look something like this. A 5K of around 7:30 to 10 minutes plus per mile, or 4:40 to 6:12 per kilometer. A 10K pace of 8 minutes to 10:30 per mile, or 5 minutes to 6:30 per kilometer. And a marathon pace of 10 minutes to 12 minutes per mile, or 6:12 to 7:30 per kilometer. To improve at this level, you should focus on running consistently 3 to 4 times per week. Then you should increase your mileage gradually by no more than 10% per week and work on proper running form to avoid injuries. Most runners should be able to progress beyond this stage in around 3 to 6 months. Then you move into the beginner stage. At this stage, you've built basic endurance and you can complete a 5K with no problems. You're now working on running efficiently and consistently. Your typical race paces will be something like this. A 5K pace of 6:30 to 8 minutes per mile, or 4 minutes to 5 minutes per kilometer. A 10K pace of 7 minutes to 8:30 per mile, or 4:20 to 5:15 per kilometer. And a marathon pace of 8:30 to 10 minutes per mile, or 5:15 to 6:12 per kilometer. To improve at this level, you should focus on incorporating speed work 1 to 2 times per week. So it could be something like 3 times 4 minutes all out with a 2-minute rest in between. You should now run 4 to 5 times per week to build an aerobic base. You should also start including tempo runs with about 20 to 30 minutes of an uncomfortable pace. Most runners stay in this stage for around 1 to 2 years before they move on to the intermediate stage. Once you've been training consistently for a few years is where most runners get get stuck. The lifetime intermediate who trains consistently but don't see huge progress. Your typical race paces will look something like this. A 5K pace of 5:30 to 7 minutes per mile or 3:30 to 4:20 per kilometer. A 10K pace of 6 minutes to 7:30 per mile or 3:45 to 4:40 per kilometer. And a marathon pace of 7 minutes to 8:30 per mile or 4:20 to 5:15 per kilometer. So here's how to improve at the intermediate stage. First, you need to use what's called a periodization framework, which means that you mix easy runs, speed runs, long runs, and recovery. If you want to go deeper into periodization protocols, then I'll leave a link to a video about that at the end of this one. Second, you need to add strength training to improve your efficiency, but also to reduce the injury risk that comes with more volume. And third, you need to work on pacing strategy. Most runners go out too fast in the beginning and then they fade towards the end, but most world records are set with what's called a negative split, meaning they run faster at the end than in the beginning. At this level is where most runners hit their first plateau, but with the right training, you can push through and get to the advanced level. By now, you're training consistently with a periodization framework, you're racing strategically, and you're working on the small things to improve. Your typical race paces will be something like this. A 5K pace of 4:30 to 5:30 per mile or 2:50 to 3:30 per kilometer. A 10K pace of 5 minutes to 6 minutes per mile or 3:10 to 3:45 per kilometer. And a marathon pace of 5:30 to 7 minutes per mile or 3:30 to 4:20 per kilometer. So how do you improve at the advanced level? First, you need to dial in your nutrition, your hydration, your fueling strategies, and your sleep and recovery. Then you need to use the knowledge you now have about your body and what you respond the most to, and then you need to do more of that and less of all the other stuff. You should also start to experiment with lactate and VO2 max testing. And then you need to find a training group with people who run just as fast as you or even faster, so that they can push you in your daily training. Most runners never get past this level, but a few people do, and then they move on to the freak level. This is the top 0.1% of runners, those racing at a national or even international level. At this level, your typical race paces look something like this. A 5K pace of sub 4:25 per mile or sub 2:45 per kilometer. A 10K pace of sub 4:35 per mile or sub 2:50 per kilometer. And a marathon pace of sub 5:10 per mile or sub 3:12 per kilometer. The fastest marathon in the world was completed under 2 hours. That's a 4 minute and 30 second mile pace or 2:48 kilometer pace. Elite runners spent years fine-tuning everything from altitude training to heat acclimatization to perfecting their running form. And they typically train 10 to 14 times per week. So, how do you improve at the top level? First, you need to do extremely high volume, so typically 80 to 140 miles per week. Second, you need to take advantage of technology and work with world-class coaches on lactate, VO2 max, altitude, everything. For most people, this level is not realistic, but it's fun to compare. Here's a full running pace standard chart. Screenshot it and use it to set realistic goals for yourself. And if you want to learn how to use a periodization framework to become faster in less time, then watch this video next.